At least 135,000 families and more than 600,000 people in Haiti have been affected by the earthquake. In the meantime, search and rescue operations continue. Public workers in Brazil began a general strike against the administrative reform pushed by Bolsonaro's government. The Taliban are ready to establish an Islamic government in Afghanistan. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada, and now we begin with the news. At least 135,000 families in Haiti were affected by the earthquake and require humanitarian assistance. Civil protection and rescue teams are still searching for more victims. The General Director of the Civil Protection, Jerry Chandler, pointed out that the situation has affected almost 600,000 people. The earthquake has left a partial death toll of 1,941 dead and more than 9,000 injured. So far, rescuers have managed to recover alive at least 34 people who were trapped under the rubble. The residents of the most affected areas assured that they heard the screams of the citizens buried under the debris. Damaged health centers in the southern region have been struggling to tend to their patients.
Just like this are in bad need of medical reinforcement, supplies, medications, food, tarps, hygiene kits, disaster materials for these families that are still greatly hurting. A lot of materials have still not made it out from the States or from Port-au-Prince, and so this is just one of 5 hospitals or clinics that we've been to just like it.
In the meantime, a Cuban medical mission arrived in Haiti to alleviate the health collapse following the 7.2 earthquake that hit the country. Many of the doctors are deployed in remote areas to treat hundreds of Haitians arriving in trucks with exposed fractures and other injuries. Enough time to eat, the Cuban health specialists are even working in the open air. In hospitals, they help to improvise. The National Hospital Network is suffocated by poverty, corruption, and the pandemic.
Cuban collaboration in Haiti since 1998 will be one of the best kept secrets in the world. August 14, 2021, an earthquake of 7.2 degrees again hit Asian lands. Once again, Cuba is present in Port-au-Prince with 253 doctors who quickly moved to the affected places, treated the wounded, and adapted at a hospital for emergency surgeries. The images hurt. It hurts to know that it will take time to return to normal, but the medical brigades from the island accompany the Asian people in coups, earthquakes, and epidemics, and other complex situations, and the current crisis will be no different.
And now we move on with other topics. Funeral companies in Martinique face an excess of services amid the rise in COVID-19 cases and fatalities. The Caribbean overseas French territory has recently closed borders to tourists and imposed a lockdown for nationals as health authorities registered 1,200 cases per 100,000 inhabitants.
Normally, 1 burial a day, already one team working a fair amount, and since COVID, we can say that we are practically running at 3 burials a day. Yesterday we had 5 burials, today we have 2, tomorrow we have 3. We are extremely sought after, and as most deaths occur in hospitals, we are called upon to relieve congestions in the funeral home and to come and collect the deceased.
notamment pour pouvoir désengorger.
President Bolsonaro is responsible for falsifying a public document linked to the handling of the pandemic in Brazil, according to a disclosure of the Senate commission that investigates the government's management of the COVID-19 crisis. Randolph Rodriguez, second in charge of the investigation commission, validated the suspicions of Bolsonaro, basing his case in misinformation about COVID-19 on inexistent evidence. In an early stage of the sanitary crisis, the Brazilian head of state had said that the numbers of infections and deaths due to the COVID-19 were being overdimensioned by governors and mayors without any real proof of backup this accusation. The document Bolsonaro based his claims on turns out was redacted by Alexandre Marquez of the Court of Auditors, who in talks with the Commission disclosed that the document's misinformation was tampered and flawed. The Commission of the High Chamber indicated that the President was wrong to use the document and not verify the validity of its content. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern warned that New Zealanders must brace for additional COVID-19 cases from an outbreak that has plunged their country into a snap lockdown. The official also said they were dealing with a highly transmissible Delta variant linked to the outbreak in Australia that authorities have so far been unable to contain. The rapid rise justified the Prime Minister's decision to issue nationwide stay-at-home orders. The new infections ended a 6-month run without local transmission in New Zealand, which has recorded only 26 COVID-19 fatalities in a population of 5 million since the beginning of the pandemic. And the World Health Organization slams the rush by wealthy countries to provide COVID-19 vaccine booster shots, while millions around the world have yet to receive a single dose.
Regardless of what ultimately the science comes to an agreement regarding the length of protection or the increased benefit from marginal increase in benefits from having booster doses, the reality is right now today, if we think about this in terms of an analogy, we're planning to hand out extra life jackets to people who already have life jackets, while we're leaving other people to drown without a single life jacket. That's the reality. Science is not certain on this. There are clearly more data to collect. But the fundamental ethical reality is we're handing out second life jackets while leaving millions and millions of people without anything to protect them.
Meanwhile, the Pan American Health Organization's director warned of a mounting mental health crisis throughout the Americas, which is being driven by COVID-19.
Facing a mental health crisis that, if left unaddressed, will have severe consequences. It will not only worsen the mental health burden in our region, but also prolong the pandemic's impact. While many countries have deemed mental health a priority and have integrated mental health support within their COVID-19 response plans, few have backed these promises with funding or have put these plans into action.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. Public sector workers and civil servants in Brazil begin a 24-hour general strike in rejection of the administrative reform pushed by Bolsonaro's government. Protesters say their proposed amendment to the constitution undermines the rule of law and threatens labor rights. They denounce that its approval is a climax point in the privatization agenda advanced by the administration of Jair Bolsonaro. Civil organizations insist the measure destroys the public service and worsens the working conditions of doctors, teachers and nurses, thus affecting current and future employees, and especially the low-income population. Public workers have announced the strike could be extended as part of the struggle against a new attempt to eliminate neoliberalism. Meanwhile, the Brazilian Federation of Post Mail and Telegraphs Workers announced a decision to go on indefinite strike from Tuesday on, opposing the privatization of the company. The Communications Secretary of the Federation, Emerson Marinho, pointed out that several assemblies will be held with a third night shift. The protests, he informed, will go on for an undetermined period of time. The workers demand involve improvements of the working conditions and payment, along with putting a stop to the company's ravaging by Jair Bolsonaro's project of giving it away to the private sector. And at least 57.6% of Brazilians believe that President Jair Bolsonaro intends to stage a coup d'etat in the country, a recent poll revealed. The survey conducted by the Opinion Institute of Congress in Focus also revealed that 74.5% of respondents say they always prefer the democratic regime, while only 31.1% do not believe Bolsonaro will attempt an institutional rupture. The survey also asked respondents about the military parade of tanks a week ago in Brasilia. For 43% of the people, Bolsonaro tried to intimidate Congress and the Federal Supreme Court with these events, and for 49.3%, it worsened public opinion on the president. Likewise, according to 61.3% of those interviewed, the right-wing mandatory is to blame for the death of almost 600,000 Brazilians due to the COVID-19 epidemic. Jair Bolsonaro aspires to run for re-election next year, and his possible rival will be former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who, according to the polls, is ahead of him in voting intentions. In Bolivia, a lie repeated ad nauseum by media outlets that supported the coup d'etat attempted to justify the Sencata massacre in the city of El Alto. International experts who investigated this and other human rights violations confirmed it. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, tells us the details.
This is the chapel of Sencata, district number 8 of the city of El Alto. The autopsy was performed here on the 11 murdered in October 2019, and their wake was held here.
He went to his other job. That was his mistake, walking across the Sencata plant. The bullet hit him in the back and exploded in the front.
They cornered me in a place and shot me twice directly, once here in the collarbone and once in the stomach. I asked for help. Here I am walking around asking for help.
When he was alive, he was 32 years old. They shot him in the head. It was in the head. It was a murder. They shot him in the head.
In this chapel, each family member and survivor told their experience to the international experts who investigated for 8 months the violence before, during, and after the coup d'etat of November 2019.
In the afternoon, my son went out to visit his uncle. 20 minutes to 4 o'clock, he was already at the door with the bullet shot in his forehead. I'm the mother of a dead victim, John Ronald Quispe Ticona. I'm still in pain, brother. I cannot forget. I'm embittered. I called him and he didn't answer me. In the afternoon I found out that he was dead here in the church in Sencata. I asked for justice because he left 3 orphan children. In the autopsy they did here, they removed the bullet. The medical negligence at that time was serious. He had not been treated. He was just there. They didn't really do anything to him. They let him die, and now I'm with my little daughter who does not know her father.
And in this chapel, the relatives of the victims received the report of the group of international experts that also investigated this massacre. The group of experts had the opportunity to verify, based on the study of the autopsies, that the caliber of the weapons used on the casing found at the site and on the bodies of the victims are compatible with weapons exclusively used by the army. The de facto government defined those killed as lumpen, alcoholics and drug addicts. It also claimed that they were trying to blow up the Sencata gasoline and liquefied gas storage plant, a version that the right wing and its media enthusiastically spread to justify the massacre. Based on factual investigations, visiting the plant, analyzing investigative files, and through technical studies by the Argentine forensic anthropology team, we are able to state categorically that there was no risk of generating an explosion at the Sencata plant. The arrest of people for looking like masistas, meaning sympathizers of the government of Evo Morales, was also detected. The persons arrested were tortured in police station number 3, EPI 3, in Satellite City, and the woman of the group was subjected to gender violence and sexual violence. Hours after their detention, the members of this group were presented at a press conference as terrorists, with no protection of their privacy or their right to the presumption of innocence. Experts also confirmed that people injured by the police and military suffered discrimination, racism, and denial of medical services, also because they looked like masistas. The number of wounded is uncertain because many choose not to go to the hospitals out of fear. The official report mentioned 11 dead and more than 70 wounded.
Freddy Morales, TeleSUR, Bolivia.
Thank you, Freddy, for the information. And now we move on to other topics. Workers of the education sector in Uruguay mobilized to demand more budgets, freedom for the union, and a democratic educational project. The Coordinating Committee of Education Unions of Uruguay called for a rally in the vicinities of the Legislative Palace with the support of different teachers' unions. They demand compensations for the lost wages in 2020 due to the cease of learning activities because of COVID-19. They also denounced that the resources allocated per child were 4% less than last year and condemned the privatization of education as a disdain for the current economic and social crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The teachers' unions assured that other mobilizations could take place in the coming days against governmental reforms to education for 2022 and 2023. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid announced that the insurgents are ready to establish an Islamic government in Afghanistan after having taken control of the country. Mujahid also referred to the current situation, assuring that within the following days, security will improve, especially in the capital, Kabul. The Taliban declared that the Islamic Emirate is committed to all of the countries in not being a threat to any state, but made clear that the Afghans have a right to adjust and dictate the rules, and that foreign observators must respect that. The Taliban's spokesperson promised improvements in Afghan economy and in the life conditions of the population. He once again apologized to all those affected, even to the previous government's army members and to those who work with external forces. The spokesperson stated that they will need international help in order to stop being a production epicenter of opioids. Meanwhile, Amrullah Saleh, the first Afghan vice president who ranked below former President Ghani, proclaimed himself acting president of the country and joined Ahmad Has Massoud in Panjshir. Shah Massoud announced he had launched an armed movement against Taliban and called for all Afghans to work towards a military revolution to fight the insurgents. The country is now back into a civil war scenario between the Taliban and their supporters on the one hand, and the Panjshirs plus people on the side of Amrullah Saleh on the other. Representatives from the World Food Programme and United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees warn of a possible humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Al-Shabaab announced the taking of a military base in the Somali central region of Galmudug. According to the armed groups, the attack went on for several hours. They also reported that in the military operation against the Galmudug base, at least 30 soldiers died, as well as several officers, among them the Naval Forces Commander Hirchi Ali Shir. Ex-members of Somalia's intelligence services alerted that a situation similar to the one in Afghanistan could be triggered if the government keeps relying on the assistance of foreign troops for every action. The United States National Hurricane Center reported that Tropical Storm Grace is moving towards the Yucatan Peninsula, while Storm Henry is approaching to southern Bermudas. After leaving rains that could still cause flooding and landslides in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Grace will continue to move away from Grand Cayman today. It is also expected to make landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula Thursday morning and move over the southwest Gulf of Mexico early Friday. At the same time, Henry, a smaller storm in the Atlantic, is about 130 miles south of Bermuda, with maximum sustained winds of 50 kilometers per hour. Fred also weakened after making landfall in northern Florida on Monday and is now a tropical depression that threatens to bring rains and flooding. France's worst wildfire in the summer has been active for more than 3 days. In the event, 2 people have died and thousands of residents and tourists have fled. The blazes are spreading through the southeastern Riviera haven of Saint-Tropez in the Var department. The scorching has ravaged 5,000 hectares of forest and vineyards, resulting in the destruction of the wildlife that inhabited the lands. 1,200 firefighters were deployed with high-pressure hoses, water-bombing planes and helicopters, yet the flames are still active. This is the latest addition to the wildfires threatening the Mediterranean region all through Turkey, Greece, Italy, Spain and Algeria. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.